In April 2021, Manhattan Community Board 9 voted unanimously and in strong opposition to the West 142nd Street rezoning, along with the overwhelming majority of the public present during that call, who also spoke in opposition to it. These are sentiments I share because this development simply does not meet the goals that the developer purports will fill the urgent, long-term housing needs of this community. First of all, units were not vacant. Vacancy was artificially created through strong arming and then warehousing many of them, which Liz Whiteakis and others testified to. The tiny corner lot that the developer described as a vacant, unusable piece of land was actually a garden. Now, I find it ironic and almost hypocritical that during the July 14th public hearing, the developer points out that in District 9, rents are increasing 4 times faster than in the rest of Manhattan. Well, the very same development that they're proposing would only exacerbate that rate. The proposed R9 iteration offers no net increase in the number of affordable units. The 14-story tower that they proposed at the last minute, while all of us are on recess and have no possibility of providing input into, that actually offers even fewer affordable units, 17 to be precise. And, going back to the R9A, of the apartments that are supposedly the most, quote, affordable, not one of them are 3-bedroom apartments, even though many in this district are families who need them. And only 2 of the supposedly deeply affordable units will be 2 bedrooms with rents that are nearly $1,000 each. It is laughable that most of those new units are going to be studios. Again, this is Hamilton Heights. Now, that $1,000 rent is actually also higher than what is traditionally paid in this area. I mentioned this in April, but we have to bear in mind that most of the long-term residents in this area are minimum wage earners. I have neighbors who are making $19,000 a year, and even if they're working 40 hours a week, that's still thousands of dollars less than what they would need to qualify for an application to this development. And frankly, some of us are tired of hearing developers using vulnerable, lower-income communities to serve as the poster child to justify another mostly luxury tower. Questions about the ground stability, among others, were asked years ago and remain unanswered. The condominium that collapsed in Florida recently offers a prime example of why ground stability is a major issue. Now, obviously, the cause of that collapse is not identical to the issue of ground stability, but even the 14-story iteration that was presented at the last minute to DCP, coupled with the fact that those questions about the ground stability still remain unanswered, calls safety into question. By the way, the Florida tower was only 11 stories tall. Now, to be clear, I am not stating that what the developers here are proposing will suffer the same fate as the Florida tower. But again, with those questions unanswered, I can't help but wondering what future problems might we be inviting and at what cost. West 142nd Street is one of the last 2 rows of historic houses in that neighborhood abutting Riverside Drive. Many of us would much prefer to see those houses remain intact and sold to families in or displaced from West Harlem. It's important for this commission to draw on examples worldwide. If Beijing's past is New York's prologue, there's much to learn. Here you're seeing hutongs, which refer to some of the oldest homes in China. Some of them are older than the city of Beijing itself. Like the row houses, with this built environment came a strong sense of community and family. However, in gearing up for the 2008 Olympics, Beijing began tearing them down and putting up skyscrapers everywhere. I cannot help but seeing parallels between Beijing and New York. And the lesson of caution is that after August 2008 came and went, many of those luxury towers in Beijing remained vacant. In the slideshow, you'll see a 2019 article from Bloomberg pointing out the enormous housing problem that this vacancy created. Because it was essentially development on steroids, you're seeing what's referred to as ghost cities. Now, these are not so-called NIMBY or left-wing sources. The last 2 articles here are from the Financial Times and Bloomberg. I encourage you all to do your homework. Now, we're already starting to see similar problems here across Harlem. These towers have a story that's very similar to the row houses on West 142nd Street. The developers tore down 3 of those brownstones and put up 2 towers. Now, the issue isn't so much the eyesore that's created by tearing down these historic buildings, but the fact that the overwhelming majority of the units remain vacant. I took this video days before the April hearing. Now, to those of you who might claim this is another NIMBY naysayer, please look at the facts and ask yourselves, why are we building more predominantly unaffordable towers when we have so many other vacant buildings like the Maranime, which after many decades of being vacant has trees growing out of the side windows? If we're serious about ending New York's housing crisis, we need to address the vacant buildings that we already have all over the city and stop putting up more mostly luxury towers. Again, many of those properties have been vacant for decades. Now, after the pandemic, we're seeing scores of vacant office towers as well. An op-ed in AMNY points out that we actually have more vacant properties than there are people living in homeless shelters. So folks need to understand that this housing crisis is largely manufactured. And we also need to stop peddling this false narrative that neoliberalism is our savior. I am also deeply concerned by what I'm seeing as a catastrophic trend that's been happening in the housing market. And that is developers turning middle-class houses, single, multifamily homes built for families into essentially cash cows for private equity funds, some of which are entirely abroad or partly abroad. Even the conservative Wall Street Journal has documented this. Now, to Soma Realty, I know these are issues that you don't care about, but I would implore you to think and let the story of 123rd Street development serve you well, bearing in mind that this is located near Whole Foods, an endless list of popular retail stores, another long list of public transportation options. If those developers were having a hard time filling vacancies pre-pandemic, what makes you think you'll have better luck on a street that has far fewer commercial options and only one already crowded train? Now, I said this during April, and it's worth repeating, that the Asian cities have us beat. They've surpassed us when it comes to the highest towers, the longest bridges, or whichever other superlative you can think of. That is not what's attracting visitors. It's not what's attracting new residents or the tens of billions of dollars in tourism revenue and the folks that you're seeking to fill those very same towers. A big part of what makes New York the attractive city that it is its rich history. And that's partly stemming from the built environment created by structures like these row houses. It's that blend that Jane Jacobs talks about, that dynamic of different people from disparate incomes. It's the juxtaposition of, you could say, quasi-antiquity with modernity, of different city uses and other things that make New York truly unique. I am not saying this as someone who's read theories of urban planning. I am saying this as someone who has been the resident of a number of major cities around the world. You would essentially be cutting off your nose to spite your face. So please preserve those brownstones, sell them to families who need them, to nonprofits or community-based organizations. Thank you.